Hello. Sorry we missed out last week. Bit of a virus, but over that now. Now I want to show you something I bought a few weeks ago, and maybe devastatingly interesting to some of you, a small minority. It is this set of four rather lovely but ostensibly commonplace silver dessert spoons, old English pattern. We've covered that, haven't we? These are early 19th century, just before fiddle pattern takes over as probably the most popular pattern of the 19th century. These were in a little out of the way sale up in Scotland. Small collection of York silver came in. Obviously someone had put that together over the years and they dispersed it. Nothing momentous, it has to be said, apart from, I thought, these four dessert spoons, and they're momentous because they bear quite a rare maker's mark on the back. And it's that punch there, and I'll try to put it in close up, and it's RC with a little dot, and it is for Robert Cattle. Now, the partnership of Cattle and Barber, which came after this mark, is quite famous. They produced quite a lot of the important very early 19th century silver, and then Barber went on to form various partnerships throughout the life of the York Assay Office. Cattle's interesting because for a brief period, we know from the Assay Office ledger, he was on his own, he was working on his own. Now I can show you from this extremely good book, which I'm afraid written by a non-entity, but I'm afraid there aren't any copies left before anyone says, can I have a copy? You'll have to wait for a second-hand one to turn up. But there is a transcription of the Assay Office ledger, which I was happy enough to do. And if you look at 1807, trying to get this as close as we can, and it's all there as different partnerships, but here we have one sole entry for Mr. Robert Cattle. And on the following page, for the end of December 1807, we have the name of the new partnership, which is Cattle and Barber. So it's always been assumed from that notation in the Assay Office ledger that anything that bears the mark RC for Robert Cattle must relate to this single entry here, and must date actually specifically to being assayed on December the 4th, 1807. And Martin Gubbins wrote about this in his book, and he uses it to sort of set in stone some of the date letters that we see, and also when the marks for different partnerships were used. Subsequent to that, and actually subsequent to publishing this transcription of the ledger, I was very fortunate some years ago to find a set of 12 table forks by Robert Cattle. But what was interesting is in this original entry for the 4th of December, there were no table forks mentioned. And in the subsequent entries for Cattle and Barber, we don't actually get a set of 12 table forks submitted until, let me see, March the following year. So March the 26th, 1808. This may not seem groundbreaking to you, but it was to me. And actually, subsequently to those forks turning up, a vinaigrette turned up, marked by Robert Cattle. A pair of butter shells turned up, marked by Robert Cattle. And those items can only have been submitted for assay at the beginning of 1808 in the parcels of silver that are marked down in the ledger as being by the partnership of Cattle and Barber. And the answer to this is quite simple. Cattle had got his maker's mark cut and was using it at the end of December, and it just took a couple of months to get a new punch cut for the new partnership. And until that point, nobody gave a stuff that they were marking it. Barber didn't care. He was working, he was setting up, and they had to use Cattle's old punch up to about the 26th of March, 1808. it's still a rare mark, which is why I was delighted to find these. And most people that collect York silver will at some point really long for an example of Robert Cattle's mark that was just used. You know, we're saying it was one parcel at the end of 1807. It's actually only about 2 or 3 parcels of silver from the end of 1807 to the beginning of 1808. So it's still, we're talking a matter of 12 or 16 weeks when this mark was used, and then it was discarded because the new partnership was working. So it's very rare, and a lot of the pieces that were assayed at this time, they haven't survived. So if you think about that, it's a pretty rare mark. There are you do see it, and as I say, I was lucky enough to buy 12 forks, a set of 12 forks, but normally you'll see one item, maybe 2 a year. It's a rare thing. And if you're an up-and-coming York collector and you haven't got an example of that mark, you might persuade me to break up this this part. It's only a partial set, so I wouldn't mind keeping 2 and selling 2. But it's interesting because it means that anything that's marked traditionally with the Cattle and Barber punch, which is RC and JB, we've always said, because on sugar tongs, on smaller pieces of flatware, you often don't get a date letter, that those will date from 1807 to about 1814. But actually, it's 1808 to 1814. May not seem like a big difference to you, but believe me, it's little things like that that lift the silver academic's heart, I can promise you. So that was a little discovery. I'll do a very short close-up of these marks so you can recognise them when you see them. Again, as with all, you know, almost all York silver, sadly in a way, it does not bear a town mark. You have to recognise the punches, the style of the punches, the date letters, and most importantly the maker's marks, because they will flash like a warning sign when you see them and say, this is not a piece of London silver, this is a piece of York. But there you go. I mean, it was a happy discovery. Not one piece of Robert Cattle silver, but actually 4. And funnily enough, because spoons are included in that first 1807 parcel, these could be Robert Cattle when Robert Cattle was working on his own for that brief window of time. So that's those. Bit shorter this week, but remember, I am convalescing. Something momentous next week if I can find it. If not, more spoons. But until then, good antiques hunting and goodbye.